I'm sharing 10 Dungeness crabbing secrets that are going to help you catch more crabs. What's up, Dr. Mavericks, and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's no secret that I love Dungeness crabbing, and with over 30 years of crabbing on the Oregon coast, I have a few crabbing secrets I'm going to spill to you guys and help you guys catch more crabs. And we're starting out with secret number 10. Now, starting out the list at number 10 is to become friends with your local butchers and friends with those that run your local marinas. Now, for me, I usually get my crabbing bait, which is chicken drumsticks, from my local supermarket. And I've really become friends with the local butcher there because they always have leftover chicken parts and pieces that they're going to normally throw out, and I can take those home for really cheap, or sometimes they give them to me for free. And by becoming friends with your local butcher, you're able to get some extra cuts and stuff that they would just throw out and use that as crab bait. It's a great example of not wasting meat and using it as crab bait, stuff that would normally just be thrown out. And if you got a local butcher, you should always be friends. Those are some of the best hardworking people around, and when they got extra meat around, that's free crab bait for you. And then secondarily, you want to become friends with those that are at your local marina or area that you're crabbing. Firstly, because they're going to have a lot of knowledge and information on how the water's doing, how the crabbing's doing, or even the fishing reports that are going on. It's always great to be friends with those folks because they're going to give you some tips, some insights on where to crab, how the crabbing's going before you hit the water, and that's going to help you be more successful. Those are the folks that are going to be most knowledgeable and help you become better at crabbing in that area that you're crabbing. Now, coming in at secret number 9, we're going to stick with bait, and that is that you need to thaw and defrost your bait. Now, if anybody's ever seen the Deadliest Catch show, they bait up their crab traps, whether they're catching king crab or a pileo crab. They're putting bait in the boxes, and it's a ton of bait, but it's not frozen bait. It's pretty much fresh fish or fresh meat that they're putting in there. And likewise, when you're going Dungeness crabbing, it is extremely hard when Dungeness crabbing to put the bait into those small bait cages, especially when it's frozen. And again, a lot of times I like to go to the supermarket, load up on fresh drumsticks and chicken, throw those in the freezer and take them crabbing. And when they're frozen, they are really hard to get unstuck. So the best way to do it is the day before you go out crabbing is to throw your meat in the garage or somewhere in a bucket, let it de-thaw, and then when you get that into the traps, it's going to be easier to put in there. You're going to maximize your space of putting the bait into the bait cage and have as much meat as possible for the crabs to go out. And when using attractants, you want the chicken or your bait to be de-thawed because that attractant's going to soak into the meat a lot easier. When it's frozen, it's just not going to happen. So you definitely want to make sure, again, your bait is de-thawed before you get out there. And I say that as well because I've gone through a few knives that I've had to try to cut up frozen bait, and man, those knives did not last very long. Now, secret number 8 is to invest in lead core line and use lead core line for your ropes, for your traps. Now, I have seen a lot of things out crabbing in 30 plus years of crabbing. I've seen boats run their engines right over floating line and cut lines and buoys, people losing their crab traps, people pulling up crab traps and the rope just snaps and they lost their entire pot, floats back down to the bottom. Now, there's a few reasons why I really love lead core line. Firstly, lead core line sinks, which means it's going to be fully under the water, which doesn't allow other boats, if they're driving around not paying attention, they're less likely to run over the line and cut the line with their engine, and then you lose all your gear. Secondly, with lead core line, it's a little bit easier to pull the traps up. You get a little bit better grip, and the rope quality is the third thing. That's going to last a really long time as long as you take care of the rope, wash it at the end of the day. That lead core is going to last for a really, really, really long time. Whereas if you have other types of rope, it's going to fray, it's going to just deteriorate over time. And with heavier traps, especially what I've seen on the coast, when we fill up pots and you got 30, 40 pounds that you're pulling up, some of that non-lead core rope is more susceptible to breaking, and then you're going to start losing gear. So off the front, yes, lead core is a little bit more expensive, but the investment is well worth it. Now, secret number 7, again, has to do with bait, and that is to use the meatiest, oiliest baits possible. Now, Dungeness crabs can smell and they can hear really well. Now, they can't see very good, which means that you want to use baits that have a lot of oil in them because they'll be able to smell that from long distances away, but also you want more meaty bait. Now, I love using fish carcasses at times, but they don't have as much meat on them. And again, one of the things with crabs is you get a couple crabs in the trap, they're making noise, they're banging around, and they're going after that bait, then more crabs will start to come in towards that bait. If you're not attracting crabs, it might be because the bait that you're using doesn't have a lot of meat on it, or it's not very oily, so the crabs just are going by it. They just don't really care. Now, I've used so many different crab baits. I've used things like mink, I've used dog food, cat food, which is be kind of oily, Now, tuna bellies, that is some of the oiliest stuff, and tuna carcasses. Oh my gosh, you cannot get the oil and the blood out of your boat. But that is some of the best crab bait possible because those oils just sit there and the crabs really, really want to go after it. And there's still a lot of meat on those portions of, say, the tuna carcasses when you use them. Again, go to your local butcher shop, go to your local supermarket. Sometimes when chicken is really super cheap and on sale, you want to get the most meat possible. And one final tip, definitely make sure you use gloves, because if you don't and then you touch your hands, you touch your mouth, it's not going to be a pleasant feeling. Don't ask me how I know. Now, secret number 6, this is something that you need to do at the end of the day when it comes to crabbing, which is to wash your gear off. Although this seems very simple, when you're talking about longevity and sometimes crabbing seasons over seasons, if you only go a couple times a year, or you're somebody that goes every single month, you want to make sure your gear is in the best condition possible. And one of the things that you want to do when you're crabbing in the salt water is to wash all that salt off so that your gear doesn't get rusted, it doesn't break down over time. And so you want to be washing your traps, and you want to be washing your bait boxes, your lead core rope, your buoys, your decoys, the whole thing. You want to wash all your gear at the end of the day. Now, it doesn't take a lot of effort to wash your gear, but this is an important step and the secret to keeping your gear in prime shape, and so you're not having to spend more money to buy more gear because your gear that you're using is breaking down, whether it's the rope, whether it's the traps. You want the best gear possible, and if you're going to have an investment in crabbing something that you want to do over and over and over again, you want to wash your gear. That will allow you to crab for years and years and years with the same gear. Now, before we get into the top 5 list, a not so secret that I also have to share with you guys, I've got crabbing merch. You can get this old school crab trap retro hoodie for other crabbing hoodies, t-shirts, long sleeves, hats, beanies. I got all kinds of crabbing gear, and if you want to support the channel, check out the link in the description below. And as a community, thank you guys for the continued support. So coming in at secret number 5 is to crab in January and February. Now, overall, the best months to crab for Dungeness crabbing are September through December. The colder weather, fall time frame, you got the male crabs with the most meat. They start to really shape it up and harden up. But over the last few years, we've seen that January and February can be just as productive, if not better at times. The most part of the year, especially the early fall, as crabbing really starts to pick up, there's a ton of people on the water. Now, the commercial crabbing fleet is out there crabbing, which means the numbers could be a little bit lower, but there's still been some really quality, really great crabbing happening. And I would say days where you can get limits within hours, and there's less people out on the water too. The colder weather, sometimes the rainy weather, it keeps a lot of people off the water if the weather's not great. But if you're willing to get out there on really decent days or really calm days, it's worth the investment. And having crab in the wintertime, you can make some of the most delicious chowder, crab cakes, and rangoon recipes out there. Plus, I find in January and February, it's a great time to experiment with different baits, different scent attractants, and just try a few different things as well that you maybe aren't able to do in the fall time frame. Or for all of you, go crab a different area you've never crabbed before. Again, there's going to be less people out there. It just gives you a better opportunity to go chase crabs and go crab somewhere else maybe that you've never crabbed before. Now, coming in at secret number 4, again, has to do with bait, and that is that you can save your bait for multiple crabbing trips. Now, recently, what I've seen in the fall time frame is I will load a crab trap up with a ton of chicken drumsticks, and then at the end of the crabbing trip, I'll start taking the bait out and notice there's still a lot of meat on the drumsticks. Now, for a lot of folks, they may just throw that crab meat out, throw the drumsticks out into the bait, but if there's meat still on the bone, I take a Ziploc bag and I'll put that extra bait back in there, save it, refreeze it, or take it out for the next day and crab with it again. And sometimes I've used the same drumsticks for 3 trips in a row and still been able to catch a ton of crabs because there's a lot of meat on them. There's still maybe some attractant in them. The meat doesn't go bad, and if you're just using it for crabbing, it's just perfect. You could reuse those drumsticks instead of getting fresh drumsticks out of the packet. Instead of using that fresh bait, using it and then tossing it the same day, if there's still meat on it, you should keep using it and save it. Coming in at secret number 3, this has to do with the way that you deploy your crab traps, which is to deploy them in a zigzaggy type of pattern or move your traps in multiple different locations on the body of water that you're crabbing. When you think about it, when you've got a large bay and the crabs are coming in, say, on an incoming tide, they may be spread out, or there might be certain lines that they're taking, right? This is just like in salmon fishing, like up a river, that there's certain lines or paths of least resistance that the salmon are going to take. And the same thing with the crabs. Again, the bays aren't extremely flat, but there might be certain areas that they might be concentrated in or coming in on from the bay, right? If there's a clamming beds over here, they may come in a certain level and then they might veer off, right? or maybe the middle of the channel is super deep and it's super dippy and they don't want to be there, so they're more on the flat areas. And so what you want to do is not maybe to deploy your traps on a straight line, because that line might be an area where there's not a ton of crabs that are coming in. They might be 20 yards to the right or 20 yards to the left. And so by zigzagging or dropping your traps in different areas, you're gonna see if there's a certain slot or area where your crab trap should be. And I always love to start the day with spreading my gear out and then maybe concentrating it to certain areas where the best crabbing might be. And again, always just think about how to experiment and make little subtle changes to get you on top of the crab. Coming in at secret number 2, this is to spend more time on the water. More time on the water means more time crabbing, which means you're gonna be learning more about the crabbing fishery in that local area that you're crabbing, and you're just gonna compile a lot more information and have more opportunity. It's like with anything, right? It takes 10,000 hours to master a skill or become really good at something, so the more time that you're spending on the water, the better that you're gonna be and the better crabber that you're gonna become. So over 30 years, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours on the water, trying different techniques, different baits, different attractants, crabbing in different locations. Again, all that adds up. You want to figure out how to become a master at crabbing. Time equals success. So the secret is, if you want to become really good at recreational crabbing, you got to spend as much time on the water as possible. Well, now that we've gone through secrets 10 through 2, well, what is secret number 1 to Dungeness crabbing? Well, that is to take family and friends crabbing with you. There's nothing more that I love better than taking some friends or taking family crabbing. It's a great recreational activity. You get in the outdoors, you get to harvest your own delicious dinner, and just spend some quality time with friends and family, not looking at your phone, and just being present and enjoying the scenery, enjoying the moment, and eating some of the most delicious, delicate sea meat out there. And also, it's one of the best ways to get kids involved in the outdoors and get them out doing something. And crabbing licenses are super inexpensive, and it's a great way to get your kids involved and get them outside. And there you guys have it, the top 10 Dungeness crabbing secrets. I hope you guys learned some great information from today's video, and you could take something from today and get better at catching more Dungeness crabs. And if you're looking for more Dungeness crabbing content, I got a great video and playlist right here that's got a ton of crabbing information and adventures. I hope you guys enjoyed today's crabbing video. Now get out there and do some epic Dungeness crabbing.